So today we need to talk about what might generally become one of the biggest updates ARK Survival Ascended has had since launch, because Genesis Ascended Part 1 officially arrives on Thursday, June 25th, 2026. And honestly, the more details that keep coming out about this update, the more this feels less like just another remaster and more like Wildcard trying to completely reinvent what Genesis actually was back on ARK Survival Evolved. But before we jump into all the details, if you want to experience Genesis Ascended completely free on day 1, plus have chances at key giveaways for the brand new Pirate DLC, Bob's True Tales Tides of the Fortune, make sure you join us over on the LoadedCrysis cluster. The link is in the description down below, and our entire cluster is fully free to play, whether you're solo, bringing your tribe, or just looking for a fresh start and new people to survive with. The Discord link is down below, and honestly now is probably the best time to join because Genesis is about to completely shake up the game. Alright, so first things first, there's been a ton of confusion online regarding what exactly Genesis Ascended is, what's free and what's paid, and how this entire update is going to work. So we're going to clear that up right away. So Genesis Part 1 itself is free for anyone who owns ARK Survival Ascended. That means the actual remastered map, the biosystem, the missions, the progression, the creatures tied directly to Genesis, all of that is included. But alongside Genesis Ascended, Wildcard is launching a separate paid DLC called Bob's True Tales Tides of the Fortune. And honestly, from everything we've seen so far, this thing basically looks like Wildcard finally bringing a huge chunk of Atlas-style gameplay directly into ARK. We're talking about real maritime systems, customizable ships, naval combat, ocean exploration, semi-procedural islands, fortresses scattered throughout the sea, massive ocean-based gameplay loops, and most importantly, entirely new water physics technology built specifically for Genesis Ascended. Now that part is probably the biggest deal here, because if we're being honest, water gameplay in ARK has always felt kind of awkward. Most players either completely ignore the ocean, or only went down there when they absolutely had to for resources, caves, or specific tames, and movement has felt weird, combat felt clunky, and building on water was limited, and the naval gameplay basically didn't exist outside of rafts. But Wildcard now say they're rebuilding the entire water system from the ground up. Actual waves, actual buoyancy, real ship movement physics, dynamic ocean interactions, and honestly this could completely change how ARK feels as a survival game. Because for the first time ever, the ocean might actually become one of the main gameplay experiences instead of just a side biome most people avoid. And the crazy part is, Genesis was already one of the most ambitious maps they ever made, even before all of this new stuff is about to be added. Back on ARK Survival Evolved, Genesis Part 1 was completely different from every other expansion. Instead of one giant open map, Genesis was split into 5 huge simulation biomes. You had the bog biome, the Arctic biome, the volcanic biome, and the ocean biome, and of course you can't forget the lunar biome. Each one felt like its own completely different game. The bog was basically a nightmare swamp full of giant insects and bloodstalkers hanging in the trees, toxic areas, and constant danger. The Arctic was all about avalanches, freezing temperatures, blizzards, and huge mountains, and the volcano biome was basically ARK's version of literal hell, with lava flows, eruptions, ash everywhere, and magmasaurs roaming around. The lunar biome felt like a sci-fi survival with low gravity, oxygen management, solar radiation, and giant space creatures. And then there was the ocean biome, which honestly might end up becoming the most important biome in the new remastered version, because now it's Tides of the Fortune, and this is the size of a map on its own. And one thing newer ARK players might not realise is just how unique Genesis actually was mechanically. For example, flyers were mostly disabled across the map, and that single decision choice completely changed how players approach progression. You couldn't just tame an RG and skip half the danger, You actually had to learn the terrain, you had to navigate carefully, and suddenly cliffs, caves, trees, rivers and biome layouts mattered way more. The map felt dangerous in a way modern ARK maps sometimes don't. And honestly, I think that's part of why so many people absolutely loved Genesis or completely hated it, because Genesis demanded that you actually engage with its mechanics. Now personally, I think Genesis Ascended has potential to massively improve the original experience, because Unreal Engine 5.5 gives Wildcard way more freedom visually and mechanically. Imagine the lunar biome with full UE5 lighting. Imagine the ocean storms with these new water systems. Imagine volcanic eruptions with upgraded particle effects. And imagine giant waves during naval battles. That kind of stuff could generally make this feel like an entirely new expansion. But let's talk about probably the biggest new addition people are already freaking out about, is the Palaeoctopus. This thing officially won the community creature vote, and honestly it might already be one of the most terrifying creatures Wildcard has ever designed. And what makes it scary just isn't about the appearance, it's how it behaves. Wildcard described this thing as a calculating ambush predator that uses the environment itself as a weapon. It drags itself across the terrain, corners players, grabs targets and holds them in place, and apparently once it controls the battlefield, escaping it becomes incredibly difficult. And honestly, the mental image of this giant octopus climbing cliff sides near the ocean is nightmare fuel, because most players naturally assume higher ground equals safety. Wildcard basically looked at that idea and said, nah. And that's what's really interesting, is this creature feels perfect for Genesis specifically. Genesis was always designed around environmental danger, not just creatures running around you in open fields. The map constantly tried to trap you, separate you, overwhelm you, or force you into bad situations. The Palaeoctopus feels like an extension of that philosophy, especially in the ocean biome where terrain awareness is already difficult enough underwater. Now alongside the Palaeoctopus, we're also getting one of the weirdest companion creatures ARK has ever introduced, the Tide Pup. At first glance, it honestly just looked like a cute shoulder pet, but then Wildcard started explaining how it actually works, and things got weird very quickly. Apparently the Tide Pup evolves based on your gameplay, the situations you survive, the way you use it, and the pressure you experience together. Wildcard basically hinted at no two Tide Pups may fully develop the same way. And honestly, this sounds way deeper than the normal ARK creature progression. Usually in ARK, once you start taming something, that's pretty much all there is to it. Your level stats, breed mutations, done. But the Tide Pup sounds like something more like an evolving companion system. The death mechanic might be the craziest part, because apparently when the Tide Pup dies, it doesn't truly disappear. Instead it enters some kind of dormant state before reforming later, almost like it adapts through defeat. And honestly, if Wildcard pulls this off correctly, this could end up becoming one of ARK's most beloved creatures in history, and especially for solo players, because shoulder pets in ARK already tend to become emotional attachments for players. Now, another thing I think people are massively underestimating about Genesis Ascended is how important the mission system actually was. Genesis introduced 176 missions across the 5 biomes. Bear in mind, Studio Wildcard mentioned that they might look to completely revamp these missions. And these weren't just basic fetch quests. Some were races, some were boss fights, some were survival challenges, some gave you temporary creatures to use, and some completely changed gameplay rules. And honestly, Genesis missions were probably the closest ARK has ever had to feel like a full RPG experience, because you had progression systems, currencies, reward tiers, difficulty scaling, and speaking of currency, Genesis also introduced hexagons, which players earned through missions and glitches scattered across the map. The system alone completely changed progression, because suddenly players had alternative ways to earn resources and gear outside traditional farming. And honestly, I would not be surprised if Wildcard expands that system even further in Ascended, especially considering how much more ambitious they seem to be getting with gameplay systems lately. Now, one newer thing that players need to understand before Genesis launches This map is hard, generally hard, not just because the creatures hit harder, the environments themselves constantly work against you. In the Arctic biome, you feel freezing temperatures and avalanches. In the lunar biome, you deal with radiation from sunlight and oxygen management. In the volcano biome, eruptions can happen and ruin your day completely. And then there's the bog biome, which still might be one of the most misleading spawn recommendations in ARK history. Back in ASE, Wildcard labelled the bog as an easy starting area. Meanwhile, players were getting dragged into trees by bloodstalkers 5 minutes after spawning, and honestly, the bog traumatized people. And weirdly enough, the ocean biome, despite sounding terrifying, actually became one of the safer early game locations for experienced players because there was more breathing room on land. Though now with naval gameplay, giant octopus monsters, I don't think that's going to stay true for much longer. Another thing that made Genesis unique was how lore heavy it actually was. The entire map was basically a giant simulation controlled through the HLNA, and throughout the biomes, players discovered glitches and Explorer Note style lore that slowly revealed what Genesis really was. It heavily connected into ARK's larger storyline, and even teased places like Arat Prime years before the recent announcements of Lost Colony. So honestly, with Lost Colony and Arat Prime becoming more important recently, Genesis Ascended right now actually makes perfect sense for the game story-wise. Wildcard clearly wants players revisiting this part of the lore again, and that is what we're super excited for. Now let's talk about the visuals for a second, because I generally think Genesis might end up becoming one of the best looking maps in all of ASA. Think about how insane some of the environments could look in Unreal Engine 5, the glowing lunar biome alone could look ridiculous. Imagine low gravity jumps with modern lighting and volumetric effects. Imagine storms rolling across the ocean biome with these new water systems, or volcanic ash clouds filling the sky during eruptions. Genesis already had some of the most creative biome ideas in ARK history. UE5 could finally allow those ideas to fully shine visually. Now of course, there's one concern that everybody has: performance. Because let's be real here, Genesis 1 was already an extremely demanding map back in Survival Evolved. Now you add modern graphics, advanced water physics, ship systems, naval combat, ocean simulations, new creatures, UE5 rendering, and suddenly this might become one of the heaviest ARK maps to ever have attempted. Obviously, Astraeus is being one of those right now. So I'm very curious to see how launch week goes, because if Wildcard nails the optimization, Genesis Ascended could become incredible. But if performance struggles, people are going to notice very quickly, especially in multiplayer environments with large tribes, naval battles happening simultaneously. And honestly, I think the Marmotine gameplay is exactly what has me the most curious overall, because this could completely reshape PvP and PvE gameplay. Imagine giant tribe wars happening at sea. I'm super excited about the launch of Genesis Ascended Part 1, and if you are looking to experience Genesis Ascended for free with us day one, make sure you join the LoadedCrysis cluster. The Discord link is in the description down below. Whether you're a solo player looking for a tribe, a returning veteran, or someone completely new wanting to experience Genesis for the first time, you are welcome to join us. The link is down below, and June 25th generally feels like one of ARK's biggest moments we've had so far. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.